Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Art of Feeling Better podcast. And today I thought I would do something a little bit more practical, and I would give you some tools that might be helpful for you in my capacity as a first aid for mental health instructor. So as I've been on my little journey and I've been working out in the community for several years now, and I've been training people up as well as practicing out in the field, it has become very apparent, and I know you will all agree with this, that we have a wee crisis on our hands when it comes to mental health. One of the reasons that I developed Mojo School in the first place, so Mojo School of Holistic Wellness is my online platform where I have every bit of my knowledge and all of my tools. 500 tools on there. If you're interested, I'll pop some links in. One of the reasons that I developed this is because when I was out working in the community, I found myself in spaces where there was such a high level of unmet need. There was so much trauma. And I know that word is bandied around all over the place and people take exception to the word trauma because a lot of people don't believe that, how can I articulate this properly without pissing any more people off? The word trauma is bandied around an awful lot, and it seems to be very much a buzzword, and there's lots of hashtags, and I know a lot of people feel that it devalues and discredits specific trauma in a clinical sense, or a trauma that they might have experienced and they view as being different to somebody else's trauma. In the way that I completely agree with that, I think a lot of language needs to be looked at. A lot of people will band around the word depression and they will say, I'm so depressed today. Mate, you are not depressed. Depression is a very, very serious, life-threatening clinical thing. And you're just living life and having experience and maybe learning to surf, having a dip and having a bit of a shitty day. And the language that we use sometimes causes more problems than it solves. And we need to really address that because it is really important. So I'm not being flippant and I'm not kind of disagreeing with any of that. I absolutely agree. But at the same time, people are feeling things. People are feeling things that they can't articulate and they don't know what language to use. And that feels to them at that time the word that they need to use to describe how they're feeling. And it's all part of the same problem. There is still an unmet need. There is no resilience building. People aren't passing on the capacity to deal with life in all of its amazing glory and all of the great things, but all of the bad things that come with just life. We are not teaching our children the right coping skills and strategies. We're not learning them ourselves, and we're perpetuating this and passing this on. And throw social media in the mix and technological advancement, and our emotional selves cannot keep up with everything. And this is the problem. So, we can't dismiss people who are suffering or struggling and can't find the words that they need to explain how they're feeling. We need to educate people more, and we need to get into a space where people can understand and differentiate between moods and between disorders. And we need to understand that there are many. We're on a whole spectrum. We have diagnosed and undiagnosed. We move through things on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, from feeling great to feeling really, really terrible. And we need to understand that everything is not black and white, and we need to kind of have that kindness and compassion for everybody out there that's experiencing things, and also, and also for ourselves. So part of my journey is to try and learn as much as I can and pass on the bits that work for me. And if they hit and they resonate with you, brilliant. I'm glad it helps. And if it doesn't, that's okay as well. And I know there's a lot of contentious issues out there, and I tend to jump on most of them. And it is what it is. That's what I will continue to do. But part of my journey in this sphere and in this realm is to work in what I consider to be trauma recovery. And again, the language, there's very, very contentious, and there's a lot of discrepancies between people's understanding, people's perception, and people's experiences with trauma and with the word trauma. So for me, and in my practice and in the way I work, trauma is an experience that was so emotionally impactful that it still affects your life today. So regardless of what the clinical definition may be, regardless of what individuals who've experienced multiple things through their lives consider that's traumatic, that's not traumatic, because every single person has a different view on this. For me and the way I operate and the way I work, an experience, something that's happened in your life, could be when you were very, very young, you might not even remember it, but it was so emotionally impactful at the time that it still has an effect on your life today. Now, there's an assumption out there, and we do this in our training actually, and we do a lot of it around when we're training to be instructors around things like PTSD and things. I've worked with a lot of people really high up in the military. I trained with some people in the military and in police that gave some really good insight, and we were talking about PTSD, and even in the manuals, the first set of manuals when I trained years ago, on the topic of PTSD, it was military active combat. There's a picture of a person in full military get-up on the front line. And that was, again, the kind of the assumption that PTSD only exists in that space. And we had some really, really good, really rich discussions around how actually there's, not always obviously. And there's a police person who was on the course at the same time, who said actually police tend to have really high levels of PTSD that isn't really supported, because we're going into multiple situations in multiple, each hour of the day can be something different, from an RTA to a suicide to a domestic abuse situation, and not always trained to be able to deal with the compassion fatigue and the actual trauma of witnessing some of these things. Whereas in the military, a lot of people were saying that actually we're trained for this kind of stuff to begin with. So whereas it's massively impactful, it can be very different. And each person's individual. Depends on their experiences as a child, what they've experienced, what their levels of tolerance and resilience and what their coping strategies are, how their brains work, how it impacts them. So it's all very, very different. And of course, we have lots of things, childbirth, trauma in childbirth, witnessing an accident, being in an accident. There's lots of different things, abuse. There's lots of things that can be in the mix there when it comes to things like PTSD. But that really got me thinking as well. It got me thinking, gosh, for me, because I'm a raging empath and I just feel everything, I really do. And my purpose here is to try and support people and provide some tools for them to work through whatever shit they've been through and with whatever they need. I got to thinking, there are people that I work with who have experienced what would be considered significant trauma with a capital T. And it would be textbook case, and what everybody would agree, that is trauma. You down the road there that's just had this a little bit, you can't be banding around the word trauma, because that's trauma. That isn't trauma. That's just I had a bit of a crap day and something bad happening. And it just couldn't sit well with me. It just couldn't. I get it. I understand that. Totally get it. But if a person is having a physical reaction and they're really experiencing difficulty and pain that they can't process, for me, that's enough. You might not agree with that, but for me, that's enough. If somebody is in pain, they have never been provided the tools to deal with pain, then something really insignificant to somebody else might cause them overwhelming damage that then has a knock-on effect to them, their family, their kids, their health. We can see disease prevalent because people are just unable to deal with some of the experiences they've had. And who are we to judge that? Who are we to judge? It's easy to judge because, I've done it myself. I've been in spaces where I've had some horrific things that I've experienced, and then the next day I'll be back out in the field and somebody whose dog's just had a hip replacement and they are absolutely on the floor crying because they are, and I'm thinking, you have no idea what trauma is, but you have to catch yourself, because for them it's a really traumatic experience and it's an emotionally charged experience, and it's for us to kind of be compassionate and understand that everybody has a different version of that and just support people through. So we're working on the theory here that an emotionally charged experience, and again, it's going back into the woo. So this will be banging backwards and forward this episode between the very scientific, clinical, and massively woo. Everything's energy. We know this. I've said this a million times. And if you have an energetically charged emotional experience that hits you and that gets locked in your body somewhere and trapped in your body at a certain time and place, and you do not have the tools to help it move through, because emotion is just energy in motion. If you do not have a resource, a person, a tool, a strategy at that time to work through that emotionally charged experience, it gets locked in your body and there it stays and wreaks havoc, changes the way you think, the way you feel, the way you behave. Your cells can then become inflamed over time. You can end up with disease and chronic pain and all kinds of things. And this could be something as simple as, and I've used the analogy before, thinking about what we would normally consider to be traumatic experiences. This could be a person at the age of 6 who comes home from school with a beautiful glittery macaroni necklace. It's the 10th one that they've made in as many weeks, and they go home and they're so excited to show mum or dad. And mum or dad is having a really tough time, drowning in bills that they can't pay, really, really stressed out. A little person comes in and goes, Mom, Dad, look what I made. And the response they get is, whatever, not now, I'm not interested. Or just go away and play, just go. Something as normal and simple as that experience in a young person's life can leave a massive, massive lasting imprint that carries on forever through life, that what I say and do isn't important. I'm unheard, unvalidated. Nothing I do is ever going to be good enough. And that's not to say that every single person that experiences this is going to have that experience. It's to show you that can happen. These things can happen. And then you can go into school a few years later and a teacher you've got something really, really important that you want to say and you really need to reach out for some help. And a teacher is really busy and under massive amounts of pressure and has loads of marking to do. And they go, not now, I'm busy. And that reinforces that little 6-year-old with the macaroni necklace that what you have to say isn't important. You're unworthy. Your needs aren't as important as other things. You're not on my priorities list. And then you go a little bit further ahead, jump forward another few years, and you're in a relationship with somebody who's got their own stuff stacked up from their childhood. And then you reach out to get your needs met and you're shut down again for a perfectly valid reason. What I'm trying to say here is that these things can get stacked over time and they can be really simple, insignificant things in somebody else's eyes. And you might feel like that's really silly and really stupid and it's just, doesn't really matter, it's just me being silly. But these are the things that I experience time in, time out when I start to do my work and I unpick and I wind back. We look at why people are feeling so terrible, why people are experiencing what they're experiencing, why they end up in these behaviour loops and these toxic relationships and all the stuff that comes up. We do the shadow work and we peel back the layers. And every single person I've ever worked with, something will come up from a space earlier in time, usually in the early years, that was a catalyst for this. Some kind of emotionally charged experience that wasn't processed and got locked in the body and then got reinforced over years and years and years and years. So for me, that is my definition of a trauma. It can be something really simple and it's, again, if that hits with you, it hits. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I don't recognise and understand that we need to have better language to help people understand the differences between what we're trying to talk about. And if we're talking about trauma in a clinical setting, it's going to be very different than if we're talking about trauma in an emotional and an energetic setting. I hope that makes some sense. It might not, that's fine. There's more podcast episodes to listen to and I'll go into more detail. But moving forward to what can we do about it? And regardless of your standpoint on it and whether you agree with me or not, it's clear to see that we are now a species who can't deal with anything. We have lost our ability to adapt, to cope, to be resilient. And as much as we can kick off and say, well, it's just snowflakes and we just stiff up a lip. We never had this when we were kids and we just need to do this and they're just being weak and you're not supposed to cry and just man up or get on with it. That's irrelevant. That's not going to help. That's not going to make a difference. It's not going to help. It's not where we're at. It is not about our past. It is about their future. And it's around supporting people to get out of this funk and get out of the space they're in. And we can only do that by recognising these things, recognising the potential for where it's come from, whether we've experienced that or not. And I've experienced things in my life where I've not had any help or support. This sounds like a real whinge fest now, but just to give you some clarity, I have had that whole stiff upper lip, do not cry, it's weak, sort yourself out, no one's coming for you, do your own thing. And I've managed to do stuff, right? And I feel like I've been an incredibly strong, resilient person as I've grown up, and especially now I'm getting older. That doesn't mean that I judge other people on that. It doesn't mean that I say, well, I had to do it, so you don't do it. And I think I just want to support people in getting out of that space. Just because you haven't experienced that, we need to find some empathy and understand that it gives a shit, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, your experiences are different. People are suffering and we all have a duty of care to heal ourselves and give people the tools to heal others. We can't fix other people, but we can be more supportive of that and understand. And if we can't understand, we can still be compassionate. Okay, so a lot of my work is around that now. So in terms of practical things, practical application, I wanted to talk about mental health in this space that everybody's traumatised with a little t. Everybody's experiencing things. Nobody has the tools they need. Schools aren't teaching the tools. Parents, family units, nobody's passing anything on anymore. It's just kind of a really big shit show that's going to get worse as generations to come. So some of the more practical applications from when we do first aid for mental health can be really useful. And what I really wanted to talk about was things like countertransference and codependency. And there's a lot of people that are going on 1 or 2 day courses, I deliver them, that are desperately wanting to help and fix and be in a space where they can kind of offer that support. And I think there's a danger there that we get into a really tricky situation where people aren't armed with the right tools, they're not supported themselves, and they don't understand exactly what's going on. And I work with lots of people who will send somebody from a company of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of staff, and one person will be the first aider for mental health. They're like, this is not great because this person's going to get overwhelmed and burnt out, and it needs to be a more cultural shift, and we need to understand how it really works and how we need it to work. And I think a lot of people, myself included, I'm on this journey as well, who are drawn to help others and are drawn to be in these spaces, whether that's counselling, coaching, psychotherapy, psychiatry, nursing, any kind of helping profession. We have that empathy and that compassion, and we also are very likely to have this trauma drive running in the background of fixing because we were never fixed, of people pleasing because it was safe to make everybody else it was safe to make everybody else happy and meet their needs in order for us to be safe. I think if we don't address that and we don't address these root causes, we have a whole army of people going out trying to fix people and then ending up with people coming back and bouncing back to them needing more fixing, and then feeling like they haven't done a good job, or burning out because their inboxes are open 24/7. They might have done something in the workplace and then they're going to go around to that person's house and do everything for them and help them, and then any message you want to give me anytime, day or night, I'm here. It's that boundaries thing that's really, really, really dangerous in these spaces, because there are so many people suffering such a high level of unmet need. It's about sharing tools and wisdom with really strong boundaries, and I've learned that the hard way, which is why I'm passing it on. The boundaries have to come first. You have to know who you are, what you're doing, what your purpose is, what makes you happy, what your level of comfort is, what you're willing to give, what's appropriate for you to give. And you have to have a hard line. And say that from the beginning. You have to have that hard line. This is what I can do. This is what I'm going to do for you. That this, and this isn't acceptable. Nowadays, I will tell people, if you're in my inbox at random times, you will not get an answer. I just will not. I will not. And that's really tricky if you've got people who are experiencing significant crisis, and at 2:00 in the morning they want to reach out to you. But you have to be really firm on that, because it never ends well. Never ends well. There are other things that you can do to support that process. So the aims of first aid for mental health, or mental health first aid, whichever route you take in training, the first one is very similar to physical first aid. You are looking to preserve life. So if you're in that space, one of the first things that you will do is you'll be looking to preserve life. You'll be looking to see if there's any significant danger initially to yourself or to the other person. And that's your first assessment, is somebody in immediate danger, because you're there to preserve life, first of all. You are not there to be their coach, to be their therapist, to be their counsellor, to be their emotional punching bag. You're there in that instance when somebody is in dire need to be that person who helps that energy move through and gets them to the place they need to be, gets them signposted to the place and the person and the resources that they need. You are not that resource. You're just that front line, pull back from the inches from the edge, and make that difference, protecting yourself at the same time. So always preserve life first. Then the next step is you're going to alleviate discomfort. There and then in that moment, you're going to do whatever you can within your boundaries to alleviate the pain and discomfort and make them feel better at that time. Whatever tools and resources you have to do that at the time, give them some hope that they are not on their own, there is support out there, and you're going to help them to find that support. Not, I'm here, I'm going to fix it all for you, I'll come and move in with you and be your personal emotional punching bag and therapist. You're not on your own, and there are things that will help, and you won't feel this way forever, and I'm here with you right now to help you through that. Then we're looking at preventing the condition from getting any worse. We don't want it to escalate into a more serious problem, and we're looking at promoting recovery, whether that's sharing tools, resources, signposting, getting someone to their GP, getting somebody where they need to be in terms of digital resources, helplines, phone numbers, supportive people in their family unit or their friendship circle that can provide that support, helping build that unit around them in that moment. So it's all around that immediate effect of someone who is in crisis and experiencing something that they need support with. So a couple of little pointers of what you're going to do if you come across someone who is in emotional distress. You really need to take a breath. And you taught this with first aid, with physical first aid. Just 1 second, for me, 1 second of pause so that you can just ground yourself. Take a breath, support yourself and put a boundary into place, because you are going to be doing something that's going to, you're going to be experiencing compassion fatigue. You're going to be experiencing your own level of stuff that comes out of it. So take a breath yourself and just centre yourself and ground yourself and be present in that moment. Okay? And then your first port of call is to check for any indication of harm, significant harm to self or others. So you're going to do a quick sweep and you're going to check to see if anybody's in immediate danger, if the person is in immediate danger, if they've hurt themselves, if they've hurt somebody else, if they are in danger of hurting themselves or somebody else. That's the first thing you're going to do is assess the situation. Then you're going to apply non-judgmental listening skills. It's so easy in these situations to start moving into fixer mode and telling people what to do and telling people, do this, I did this. But you have to really be in a space, if you can, to not, just don't do that, because what works for you might not work for them. And you can accidentally cause more harm by trying to shoehorn somebody into a situation that, well, when I went through this worked for me, therefore it'll fix you, because if it doesn't work, then it's going to cause more problems. So the best thing you can do for somebody is apply non-judgmental listening skills. And you might feel like you're not doing enough, but believe me, that is profound support, because most people just need to be heard. That's it. They just need to be heard and properly listened to. So proper listening skills, not checking your phone or like, oh, sorry, what did you say? Really, really sit, carve out that space. Take them to somewhere that's, if you're in a noisy space, get somewhere that's a bit quieter. Sit in the right position, use your body language. If they're comfortable making eye contact, make eye contact. Let them know you are here right now and you want to hear whatever they need to say. And you're not going to judge them. You're the safe person in that moment of time. And that's the most powerful thing you can do for somebody, is just listen. Then you're going to reassure them and you're going to provide any information that you have. So if you're in this as a role, then I would suggest you have information on your phone, have helplines, have strategies, have tools, have something ready in your toolkit so you're not panicking at the time. If it's not your role and you're just listening to this, then it might be worth doing. It might be worth thinking about building a little bit of a mini toolkit on your phone in case you come across somebody who might need something, so you're not floundering around for ideas. This is a bit where it's really easy for you to try and jump into fixer mode, and this is where it can get a little bit dangerous, because the second you make promises, or because you're so compassionate and because you desperately want to alleviate their suffering, if you start to make promises and give the wrong kind of advice, or you give advice in general that you're not qualified to give, you can unintentionally cause a lot more harm. So reassurance and signposting, and any tools that you have. Sometimes like a breath work technique is really good, just to calm the sympathetic nervous system down, give them a moment to pause. You can do the 5 by 5, 5 senses, right, let's just break the state that you're in. 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can touch, 2 things that you can smell, 1 thing that you can taste. It's just enough to sort of trip the brain out into a slightly different space. So that's a tool that's going to help. And then they've got that tool for if they can employ it at another time. So reassuring that you hear, you've heard them, you understand what it is they say. You can paraphrase things back just to make sure you've got it clear. Just want to make sure I'm understanding you. This is what you're saying. This is how you're feeling. Reassure them that they're not on their own. There is help out there. They will not feel like this forever. It's a temporary. It's like the weather. Feelings are like the weather. You might feel horrendous at the moment, but it will pass and something else will take its place. We just need a strategy to help while you're in this space until it passes. A lot of reassurance. This is not the time for you to share anecdotes, although it's tempting to do so. And a lot of people kind of fall at this point because the only thing they know how to do is say, oh yeah, I had that. And they'll then switch completely to it. You stop being an active listener then, and you start sort of relaying anecdotes and stories of when you've experienced this, and it becomes about you and not about them. I remember when my nan died, I did this and I did that, and this is how I felt and this is what it meant to me, and then they switch off and it's kind of like, right, it's about you now. It needs to be about them and what they're experiencing in the moment. Sometimes you can share something, but try and make sure it doesn't drift into being about you. You can create that level of rapport and let people know that you can resonate and you understand because you've been there. But try and make that sort of brief and then take it back to them. What do you need right now? Sometimes that's the best question. I ask that a lot. What do you need? What do you need right now in this moment? Do you need a hot drink? Do you need to get warm? Do you need a hug if that's appropriate? And be very careful with physical contact and boundaries as well. But human touch is massively powerful. Do you need me to just listen? Somebody the other day had said something that was really profound because they're a young person, and I was really surprised to hear such wisdom coming out of a youngster. Do you need ears or solutions? It's a great way to put it. Do you just want me to listen? You don't have to fix. I don't need to provide a solution. Do you want me to just listen, or are you looking for some solutions? And then be very careful with the solutions. Don't give something that you think is going to fix the problem. Offer lots of opportunities. Have you tried this? Have you spoken to them? Have you come across this website? Have you tried this? Give plenty of options so that they can feel what resonates without promising that anything will really work and fix it. It's about exploration, isn't it, for that person? And you're always going to encourage those self-help strategies, and you're not going to say, I'll do this for you and I'll do that for you. And what if I did this for you and what if I did that for you? Because you are setting yourself and them up for failure. It's all about sharing those tools, the tools that you know are going to be able to get somebody out of the funk they're in and into a slightly different space. And it can be any tools. Just don't make any promises and don't tell someone that this worked for me, therefore it will work for you, because you don't know that. Different things work for different people. Just try and discern what's right in the moment. And of course, you are always going to refer people on and signpost them to some professional help. You cannot be that person for them. That is not what you're there for. It's immediate first response. You are a first responder, and you are just going to keep them safe and keep them going and help alleviate their immediate suffering until help comes. The same as physical first aid. You're going to signpost them to their GP, to the local mental health crisis team. You're going to find out if they got a crisis plan. Maybe they're already under the team. You find out if they have a plan, who is their person, where are the helplines, who do you need to contact or help them contact. That's the key, is to make sure you can get yourself out of that space and you're not going to get sucked in, because it's harmful to you. So I hope that little bit of kind of wisdom sharing, there is so much more in that. I've not got any first aid for mental health courses on the go at the moment, but they will come up in time. Every now and again I put some on. And we go through the whole process, and you get your level 1, 2 or 3, depending on what you're going for. But I just wanted to make the point to know that we're all responsible for that. We're all responsible for our own healing. First and foremost, our own healing and our own boundaries. And only then can we show up in the best possible way for the people around us. And we're navigating a space in this time and place that's really tricky. There's a lot of suffering. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of disjointedness. There's our language that I've mentioned that we're all kind of disconnected with. We all have different experiences, and we're all kind of jostling and competing and judging based on our own trauma responses. So if we can just get out of that space a little bit and move into a more compassionate, resilient, strong space where we're not in our trauma drive trying to fix people, parading out in our own masks. We're actually authentically showing up with the tools and the skills and the knowledge that can really have an impact and make a difference in real time, then that's the best that we can do. And we can really start to shift and help make a difference there. So I'd love to see this kind of approach in schools and in workplaces and in community groups, up and down the country. Some of the work that I'm doing with Mojo School, with the resources that I've got on there, are for that very reason, to try and upskill leaders and upskill teams so that we have this cultural shift that supports people to take accountability and responsibility for their own healing journey, for their own boundaries, and we can kind of do that together as a collective in a really authentic, supportive way and get out of this toxic space that we've been in. So just take care of yourselves first and foremost, and take care of each other, and try not to judge, as hard as that might be. What you're experiencing is very different to what other people are experiencing. And that will change over time as well. And what you're experiencing today will be different to what you're experiencing tomorrow. And you just don't know what's around the corner, and you don't know when you're going to need that same kind of compassion and support. So just be nice, just be kind, arm yourself with some tools, walk your talk, get as authentic and healed as you possibly can. Keep that journey going. Keep your own toolkit and your own strategies at the forefront of your mind. And pay it forward, pass it on, be the best version of yourself you possibly can. And that kind of models the behaviours for other people to do the same. Yeah, top tip, get some tools and resources stacked up on your phone, maybe some helplines in your local area, the local crisis team number, safeguarding numbers, websites that are good and fact-checked and helpful and useful, any local community groups that specialise in wellbeing and mental health and support. Have them ready in your toolkit, and then if you come across somebody who needs your help in the moment, then you're armed and equipped with the right knowledge and skills to do that. And the final thought I'm going to leave you with is, it's in one of the videos that I share in the training actually, it's the whole Ask Twice campaign, and it's really powerful because a lot of the time nowadays we use the words "you're right" as a greeting, and we walked off before we've even heard the person's response. So when we're asking someone, "Are you okay?" we really need to hone in on that and listen, read between the lines and listen, look at the body language and sort of feel into it, because your gut will tell you if something's not okay or someone's not okay. And it's about asking twice, because most people, you and I included, I imagine, if someone says, "You all right?" your initial response before they even ask the question is, yeah, fine. And we don't really ever listen properly. We will listen to respond, won't we? We're listening kind of half-heartedly because we're waiting for a gap in the conversation so that we can respond with some kind of profound fixer information or a story about ourselves. We need to really listen carefully, and we always need to ask twice. If you think someone's not okay, you ask them. If they tell you they're okay and you really feel that they're not, you ask them again and you mean it. And you give them the time and the energy and the space to say, I'm worried about you. I really feel like you're not okay, and I want you to know that I'm here for you. I don't know whether, there's only so much I can do to help, but I'm here to listen. And, that whole problem shared is a problem halved goes a long way. And if you're willing to be present and bear witness and hear their story, sometimes that is enough medicine for them to be able to move into a different space. And regardless, you're going to have your tools and you're going to have some resources to be able to share with them to help with whatever they need at that particular time. So I hope that has been of some help. Just a couple of little tips there, thinking about mental health specifically. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope that you get some peace and some joy, and you build your own resilience toolkits, and that collectively we can move into a much, much better space together.